a big mess just now, as fabrication usually does, but we got our frame notch. Check it out. So there's the notch in the stock 69 Camaro subframe. You can see the factory little thing over there, and this is the notch that we talked about. Just banged that out this morning. Just grabbed some, I think the factory I measured it just about 1/8 of an inch thick. So I went the next size up just because Granger had it in stock. Made some templates with an old soda box. And put in these pieces, bottom piece, back piece, which is now welded also to the bottom of the subframe, and then 2 side pieces. Welds weren't the prettiest when I started. I was getting the settings right, but after that, they turned out pretty good. I've already mostly ground them down, so they look pretty good. Even though you're really not gonna be able to see this, I'm gonna end up doing a little body work, prime, and then I think I'm just gonna repaint basically the subframe from here. This has got some bunch of chips and stuff in it anyway, so we're gonna repaint basically this area in a nice satin black. So yeah, glad you guys are back. Help me with the 69 here. So next, let's get some mud on this thing, or let's get some primer on it first. Just get the bare metal. Let's get some primer on it. We'll get some filler on it, and then we'll sand it, and then we should be ready for paints. So let's do that, and we'll call this subframe notch done. All right, 2 coats of satin black paint on the subframe there, so we're letting that dry up. While we're waiting on that, we've got our drivetrain here, which I would like to mate together. I'm going to try and install the motor and transmission together. I think that'll be the easiest way to do it instead of fighting to get the trans aligned, once the motor's already in the car. But we got to do a few things first, starting with the transmission. Here is your GM slave cylinder setup. You guys are probably familiar with these. Here's the stock one out of the 2010 Camaro. Decent shape, but this is one of those things where if you're doing a clutch or have the transmission out for any reason, you might as well just do one of these. Mine came with my clutch kit, but I think if you're doing it, they're about 150 bucks. I always use the OEM GM ones. I just seem to have the best luck with them. But we have to make a few changes. So you notice on the OEM one, there's 2 kind of ports here. This is the actual pressure line that goes up to your master cylinder and your clutch pedal. So this is what's going to move this guy in and out. And then this is your standard bleeder right here. And normally this comes out right here. You have to get under the car and have someone open this while another person's working the pedal to bleed this air out of the system in the slave cylinder line. So what a really common mod is, this particular one is from Tick Performance, but there's a bunch of companies that make them, is a speed bleeder. So basically it's just a stainless braided line that brings this out the bell housing here and allows you to route it up anywhere you want. Most people tuck it behind the master cylinder. I have the same thing in my Z06, just tucked right behind the master cylinder. It's a speed bleed fitting, which means you don't need to have it be opening and closing it as the pedal's up and down. Just run it into the reservoir and just pump the pedal and it'll be bled. So that'll go on to our new slave cylinder here, along with our GM clutch fitting to 4AN adapter there, which will connect to our stainless braided line over there, which goes to our McLeod master cylinder. So we have everything we need for our clutch setup. So before we mate these two together, we need to put on our fittings and bolt this thing into the transmission here. Then we're going to double check all our sensors here, make sure everything's tight, sealed up, and then we can mate the transmission to the motor and do a double check before we hopefully pop it in the car. So let's do some of those last minute things here and then mate the motor and transmission together. Alrighty guys, we are ready. Paint's dried up, looks awesome. Basically perfectly blended it into the satin black paint that's all over the rest of the engine bay. It's a little bit dusty right now, but once it's cleaned up, you know, this is gonna blend in perfectly. Looks awesome, looks factory. Really happy with how that came out. There's already some runs in this from whoever painted it before, but again, not really gonna see any of this, but I wanted it to look nice. Perfectly clean, ready for the main event to go in here, which is now ready to go. So we mated the T56 or TR6060 up to the LS3. We did our new slave cylinder, tick performance, speed bleeder. Got our clutch fitting right there. We even put one of our transmission AN lines on there so we can hook up our cooler later. We'll talk about that more. Took the shifter off so we'll have room. So yeah, this thing should be ready. Stab in there. Got my hooker transmission crossmember out of the box. It's been chilling in the parts pile for 3 months now. So I think that this part goes on the passenger side frame rail, and then we can put this in after we get the transmission up in there. So long time coming here, but I think we're ready to stab the motor and transmission in this thing. So yeah, let's do that. Let's get this thing up in the air, see if we can't shoehorn it in this car. You know, obviously the motor's already been in the car, but I don't know if this transmission is going to fit. A lot of people say that there's no cutting required on the tunnel, and you know, fingers crossed, really hope that's the case. Hope this thing bolts right up. Good driveline angle, no cutting of the tunnel other than the shifter hole, which we're going to have to do, but let's get this thing in place. We'll go from there. Transmission.
Kind of.
So we got the motor and transmission in. Transmission currently is being supported by a jack, and I'll show you why. Turns out my T56 Magnum tail housing conversion has made the transmission slightly longer due to the TR6060 bell housing than your average T56 Magnum. So my cross member here from Holley or Hooker that is specifically designed for a T56 Magnum, unfortunately, is about an inch too short in this direction here. So basically, the transmission mount needs to come back another inch in order to fit properly. And you can buy ones that are adjustable for about the same price that I could sell that or return it or whatever. But the reason that I'd really like to use this Hooker one is because the Hooker crossmember is the only one on the market that has these notches here, and that is for exhaust. So this is a 3-inch piece of exhaust just got out of the scrap pile. If you can picture this being under the car, perfectly notched for 3-inch exhaust. Other ones on the market, some of the adjustable ones don't have this, so you'll end up having to run your exhaust low and you'll scrape and all that. So unfortunately, what I think I'd like to do is cut up this brand new, somewhat expensive crossmember and make it a little bit longer. So that's what we're gonna do, or attempt to do anyways. I think I'm gonna cut kind of here and just bring this straight back like an inch. So I got some 3/16 steel here, which is the same thickness as what's on there, so should be just as strong. This thing is super beefy and strong. We're just gonna bring this pad area where the transmission mounts back about an inch. I was really hoping that this was just gonna bolt right in, you know, be an easy part of the project, not have to get out the welder and grinder for once, but you know, this is hot rodding. So yeah, let's bang this out and make ourselves a somewhat custom transmission mount here and call the motor fully installed to get it bolted in. Well, there it is, guys. Finally, we can officially say that our drivetrain LS3 TR6060 6-speed completely bolted in, ready to go. Engine is in, transmission is in, my new modified transmission cross members in, which you guys saw. You can see under there. So we added about an inch to this thing. You know,
bolted it up, got the headers in, got our Spicer drive shaft yoke back there, that really nice billet aluminum piece. Everything's bolted in, torqued, whatever.
You know, of course, through the magic of YouTube, you know, making that or modifying that transmission crossmember probably looked pretty simple, but it took all day, you know, at least a full day of cutting, grinding, measuring, sliding on my back under the car, test fitting, realizing it doesn't fit, going back, cutting it up, welding again, just, you know the deal. Made a huge mess, but it's done. Drivetrain is fully in the car, psyched about it. I think everything is exactly where it needs to be. The headers fit pretty good. The driver's side one is almost basically contacting the floorboard, so we're gonna have to figure that out, but it actually clears the steering box now that the engine angle is correct with the transmission on. Passenger side, no issues. Toss the intake manifold on there just for, you know, looks so we can see what this LS is gonna look like in this car. Still got valve covers to paint. They're in the box over there, and this intake manifold to paint. We'll powder coat the fuel rails, get the accessories on. This thing's gonna be looking pretty snazzy. So yeah, we officially have an LS swapped 1969 Camaro. Doesn't look like much right now with all this stuff on it, but you know, that's a huge step here. You know, to have basically the drivetrain fully bolted in, ready to go. Really psyched about that. So next we have, you know, we got to get accessories on, got to do some wiring, get our Holley terminator in there. Still have to cut a hole in the floor for the shifter, you know, exhaust. There's still plenty to do. But I'm going to save that for the next video. It's been a little while since I've uploaded, so I want to make sure I get this one to you guys in a timely fashion. But we got stuff to do. I'm going to jump right into the next one right now, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Thanks as always for watching. We'll see you next time.